Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Now we're going to kind of do a rerun of what we did last week. We've got the chairman of the Baxter County Republican Party, Mr. Richard Castor, is back with us. Richard, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Paul. Happy Monday to you.
Yes, absolutely. Let's start. I want to get your take on what happened with the Supreme Court and what they did with President Trump's travel ban today, upholding a significant portion of it. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I think it was a little bit of a mixed day out of the Supreme Court. This was one of the days where they dump a bunch of their court cases on us, and we have to kind of read through them. But that was pretty good, what they did. They reinstated most of it. And what was so dangerous about that was that the Constitution gives clear authority to the president to decide in matters of immigration who and how that people can come to our nation. And that's very just common sense constitutional law there. And what these liberal judges out in the Ninth Circuit court out in California were saying was that, well, because of Trump's rhetoric, before he signed this executive order, his rhetoric is what makes it unconstitutional, which is a standard that is, of course, has no basis in legal ease at all, and is something I think that was very dangerous if the Supreme Court were to hold that up, where if you said something wrong someday, any piece of legislation you passed or any executive order you signed in the future could be held to account to the words that you said before you signed it or passed it. So a very scary precedent that some of these progressive judges were trying to put on our law books, but it was a very good thing that the court unanimously rejected that. And another one, Paul, that came out today that I thought was very interesting, our friends up in Missouri, there was a Lutheran church who applied for a grant to build a playground for their community, and the state of Missouri said to Lutheran Church, no, we're not going to look at you like a normal nonprofit organization. You're a church, so we're not giving you tax dollars. And this little Lutheran church said, no, we're going to sue you because that's discrimination over us being religious. And the Supreme Court decided, a majority of them today, that a state cannot discriminate against a religious group on the basis that they are religious. So that is a wonderful thing. And I think the third one that's worthwhile to note is this one on gun rights out of California. It was Justice Clarence Thomas and Neil Gorsuch were the only two who dissented. And it was over a sheriff in California who said, you're not allowed to carry your gun outside of your house. And it kind of tells us where Alito and some of these guys on the court who are supposed to be conservative, where they land when the going gets tough. And I think we can thank the Lord that we got Neil Gorsuch in, and hopefully Kennedy will retire soon, and we'll get another good justice in there. And we may have some happy days ahead. Yeah,
there's some reports Anthony Kennedy considering retiring. I know that's, that would be huge. I know that's got liberals. I know that's got Democrats really worried because,
he would never be invited. He wouldn't be invited to another cocktail party in D.C. for the rest of his life if he did that right now. But
because if you're looking at Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she's not going to be on the court in 8 years. I think that's a very safe thing to say.
Correct.
And so potentially Donald Trump with Anthony Kennedy, if the rumors are true and he does retire, you're looking at Donald Trump being able to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. And really tilt the court to the right.
And if he picks them like Neil Gorsuch, then we're going to have some very good days ahead. And there's been some court cases decided that haven't made a lot of news, but if you read what Gorsuch has been saying in them, there's been 3 specific ones. He's very much a textualist, very much a constitutionalist, and someone who is interpreting the law as it's meant to be written, and is saying, no, it's not the court's job to reinterpret these laws for Congress. Mm-hmm. It is Congress's job to write the laws. It's our job to figure out if they're constitutional or not. We can't sit here and rewrite all this legislation just because we don't like it or we don't think it works well. And he and Clarence Thomas have consistently been the only two to stand up and say that in this season of the court. And, what a breath of fresh air. I think we were all a little bit afraid that he may not follow through with all the hype about him being so great. But so far, he has not disappointed. So if Trump can pick a few more like him, it will be a very good day for America.
I want to shift gears here. Again, we're talking with Richard Castor. He's the chairman of the Baxter County Republican Party or Committee. And then you have also, he's a radio host. He does a show called The View from Hillsdale on Mountain Talk 97.1, and you can get that online, correct, Richard, if there are other people that want to listen to what you do? Okay.
MountainTalk97.com.
There you go. And they've got a great on-demand selection there. I really encourage you guys to check that out. I want to shift gears to health care. Our whiteboard today for the week says repeal Obamacare now. There have been countless elections, countless politicians in the Republican Party who have won power because of Obamacare being such a disaster. I mean, you can go down the list of how many lies that were told to pass it. You have the folks who crafted it saying that the stupidity of the American people, lack of transparency. You're talking about Jonathan Gruber, how, what they had to do to get it passed. And no one can afford to pay their health premiums. I mean, practically this has been a complete disaster. It was a redistribution of wealth scheme. Now we have the Senate trying to do something. We have people saying, look, this is not really a repeal, though. What are your thoughts on this, honestly, Richard Castor?
Well, I think there's two conversations to be had here, and one is what are our principles as American citizens when we talk about health care? What do we see the role of government being in the discussion of health care? And I think you and I could sit down and we could have a whole 3-hour show on, why health care is not a right and how we got to a place in American society where if you're sicker than a healthier person, then the sicker person should pay more. That shouldn't be controversial. Right, that should just be common sense. But we've gotten to a place where that statement now, where if you're sicker than somebody else, you pay more, that somehow that is an offensive thing to say. So I think we got to understand, we can talk about our principles, we can talk about what should be, but then we also have to have the discussion of what can we do right now. And, I've been listening to Mike Lee and Rand Paul on this, and kind of what they've been saying is that this bill will reduce taxes $1 trillion over the next 10 years, which is great. We love that. But it's not reducing the spending of Obamacare. It's not truly affecting what is making the premiums go up, what's making it so hard for us all to afford our health insurance. And so I think that's a tremendous problem with the bill. And then today, you were texting me about this a few minutes ago, Mitch McConnell, in a last-ditch effort to save the bill, has put a section in it that will allow, and listen to this wording, the federal government will allow insurance companies to penalize people for not being insured for something like, 67 days, something like that.
Yeah.
If you reach that milestone, the insurance company may penalize you. So it's not the federal government doing it, but it's the federal government telling companies what they can and cannot do, which all of history in this great country of ours, and you go back to Woodrow Wilson and FDR and all these progressive presidents, every time the federal government tells a business what it can and cannot do, prices go up. And then to translate that to healthcare, premiums will go up. Your bills will go up.
Yeah.
And so I think this is Mitch McConnell trying to save it, trying to fill that loophole of cutting taxes and not reducing all the costs. But if I'm sitting in the Senate today, I don't think I vote for it. I think you hold out for a better bill to actually repeal this dang thing.
I think you're right, and I'm really glad to hear you say that. This idea of the individual mandate, to me, was one of the key things that, to me, it's just quite frankly immoral that we're going to say, hey, you have a beating heart in your chest, and so you owe the government money in the form of an insurance policy. That's essentially what they're saying, and I understand. The way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Senate plan removed the individual mandate, but now this is kind of a way to put it back in because the plan doesn't get rid of pre-existing conditions. You know what I'm saying? So if they have to take everybody, even if you have a pre-existing condition, then the prices are going to be high. And so then you're going to have some sort of penalty for not having insurance, because if price is high and you have the freedom to not get insurance, then that the whole system's going to. So in many ways, the individual mandate is required if you're going to do the whole pre-existing conditions thing. It's really a catch-22 here.
It truly is, and I think the biggest problem we have here is that the Republicans aren't strong enough in the Senate, or at least they're not brave enough to do what needs to be done here. And this is such an opportunity for us as a party to be talking about big, bold ideas like healthcare savings accounts. Those things could truly revolutionize healthcare in America, and they're barely referenced in this bill. There is provisions for them, there are tax credits for them, but they're not emphasized whatsoever. We have a majority in the Senate, but we've got some conservatives saying, no, we're not going to vote for this. And I think it's a good thing because we should be, as Ronald Reagan said, painting with those bold colors. This is such an opportunity for us to really stand up for what we believe in and distinguish ourselves from the Democrats and from the progressives, that we're really letting it slip through our fingers. And, Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, they're saying, well, if we just pass this, then we're going to have the Department of Health and Human Services come in and write some rules that will be very conservative, and that will, in essence, be repealing Obamacare.
Yeah.
But since when do we as conservatives allow the bureaucratic state to start writing rules, start interpreting legislation, more than we want our elected representatives to do that? That, as a party, we should be saying no. Just as what we talked about, Neil Gorsuch, it's not the court's job to interpret these laws, and it's truly not the administrative state's role to interpret these laws. It should be our representatives, these people who we can hold accountable in the next election cycle if they do wrong by us. And so I think our principles are wrong on this bill, and we're letting a tremendous opportunity slip through our fingers where we could really revolutionize our health care in the United States. And instead of, I always tell this story, Paul, about my mom. I was on my family's plan back in the day when this all happened, and we all got kicked off our health insurance plan, and we were told we needed to apply for a new one. And so we called to do the application process. It wasn't one question about, do you smoke, do you drink, how healthy are you, do you have diabetes? It was, how much money do you make every year? What's your household income? And my mom, being the little firecracker that she is, she goes, what in the world does that have to do with my health insurance rate? And the lady on the other side of the phone says, well, ma'am, it doesn't really have to do with your health anymore. It has to do with how much income you have as a household, and that determines what subsidies we can give you.
Yeah.
So it's no longer about how healthy you are. It's about how poor you are and how much wealth they can redistribute to you from the wealthy Americans, and that is a very poisonous place for us to be as a society.
Yeah, what we're watching is just like the progressive income tax, what it does to the incentive structure. When you get to a certain income level, your taxes go through the roof or whatever. And we're watching that happen in healthcare. We're going to tie this to how much money you make, and then we're going to determine, hey, we can gouge this guy because he can afford it, and it's about redistribution of wealth. I want to get your comment on one more thing. We're talking with Richard Castor. Richard,
before you move on, Paul,
yeah.
I'm going to interrupt one thing.
Yeah.
We can't let this conversation go by without putting a little bit of blame on Asa Hutchinson, our governor here, and John Kasich in Ohio, who led the movement in the Republican Party to embrace Obamacare in their states and have made it 1,000 times harder in Washington, D.C. for our nationally elected Republicans to fully repeal and replace Obamacare. Asa is up there. Kasich is up there, saying, no, don't do this. We've put so many people on our Medicaid rolls that we will lose elections if you fully repeal Obamacare now, and they need to be held accountable for that. We can't let this conversation go by without saying, Asa Hutchinson, you did wrong in bringing Obamacare to Arkansas and embracing it the way you did, and we as a party should hold him accountable for that.
Yeah, absolutely. He had a choice, to lead us out of a mess that Mike Beebe and Republicans got us into, and he chose not to do that. He chose to continue with the status quo. And now, like you're right, we've now got 330,000 people in this program, and he's claiming he's going to lose elections. Matter of fact, I'm going to pull some audio. That's some good audio I've got of Rick Scott of Florida at a Republican Governors Association a few months back. and Asa Hutchinson. Rick Scott, talks about how this is going to be really hard to do now that Donald Trump's won. It's going to be hard. The empire is going to strike back because basically all of these people who've got addicted, all these corporations, the insurance companies who want the government, guaranteed cash flow. This is going to be a tough road. And then Asa gets up there and says, we've got to get this right, this repeal right, because I'm up for re-election. I mean, those are his exact words. And I've got the audio, and I'll play it when we come back from break. But I really appreciate, Richard, you bringing that up. Last question, real briefly. This has to do with Asa and the Republican leadership in Arkansas. The Municipal League had their conference 2 weeks ago. They passed resolutions urging, so we're talking about county, city officials. They are now urging Asa and the legislature to call a special session to raise our taxes by figuring out some way to, have an internet sales tax, more revenue to the government. Is that a conflict of interest? A little bit.
Of course it is. The Municipal League operates off of people's taxes. Of course they want more. They like to give themselves another pay raise if they could. But I think any chance that these bureaucrats who live and breathe government, any chance they can get to grow the size and scope of any local or statewide government, they're going to take it. And it's no surprise that they would pass these resolutions, begging the legislature to get back in session. But we should, at the same time, as the people of this great state, say, no, every time you guys meet, you raise our taxes. We get deeper in debt, more regulations. It's harder for our businesses to thrive, and it's harder to put food in our families' mouths. Don't meet again until you constitutionally have to. This is a part-time legislature. That's how it's supposed to be, and they need to start doing as they're named. It should be part-time. They don't need to be down there every day because not every problem requires government to solve it. And we have conservatives, quote-unquote conservatives, in charge of state government. Then let's live that way, and let's tell the people the government's not there to hold your hand. The government's there to serve you, not make you serve them.
Richard Castor, I really appreciate it. Baxter County Republican Chairman, we appreciate it, sir. Be safe, okay? We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Paul.
All right, folks, it's the Paul Harrell Program. We're going to take a break. Back in just a moment.